Hi everyone, it's Vicky, Director of the MindBodyFood Institute, and welcome back to another interview in our coaching series where we interview live coaches who are out there doing their work, reaching people, helping people, and doing it in their own unique way. And we're having conversations so that you can learn from them what they've done, what's worked, what hasn't, so you can be inspired to follow your path to light the way in your business and life. Today we welcome Chris O'Hearn, Personal Development Coach. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Vicky. How are you?
I am very, very well, and I'm really excited and very happy and grateful that you've put this time aside to have a chit chat with me. It's been a little while since we've talked,
Sure.
and I always love our conversations. We have such amazing, interesting, deep conversations, and I just know that the students are going to get a great deal of value from listening to you today.
Sure. I
So
hope
would
so.
you mind, I'm sure they will, absolutely sure they will. Would you mind introducing yourself and what got you started being a coach, and then we can just take the conversation from there.
Sure. It's probably a long story, so I'll try to condense it down. Probably the aspect is I never knew who I really was. I was always expecting someone else to tell me where to go, and I was always trying to figure out my path. And if we were to talk about limiting beliefs and other stuff, I dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts because I had this story that God made a mistake in my creation. And because I was always trying to find my purpose and I was expecting someone else to show me, and I would ask these questions, what's my purpose? And I didn't know what it was. And so these negative thought loops that I kept saying to myself, it kept me kind of hating myself for a long time, basically from 10 until 25, until I started thinking differently. And so I was always expecting someone else to tell me where to go. So I did the normal path. I went through high school, went through college, you get your degree and you're going to figure it all out. And I just was always in these places that I really didn't belong, or that I just felt that I was kind of just struggling all the time. And so anyways, it wasn't until, and I think too, there's a lot of incidents that happen in our life that are always testing us and challenging us. And so what happened was I got laid off a bunch of times, and I just split a sheet down the middle and I said, here's what I like and here's what I don't like. And I started writing these things down. And on what I don't like, I said, well, I don't like sitting behind a desk. I get tired and all these things. But I put on what I do like. I said, well, I like being in the gym. And I asked this question that changed the whole trajectory of my life, not right away, but I said, I like being in the gym. And I asked the question of, well, how can I get paid for that? And so what happened was I moved back to Tennessee because I was going to college up in Wisconsin. I was up there for 7 years, Wisconsin, USA. And my folks lived back in Tennessee. And so I came back home. And so I just was kind of doing some odd and end jobs. And since I put this stuff out there, and I'll talk about trusting in the universe, I put this stuff into the universe, and these other people, these other things started helping me towards it. I really wasn't looking towards it. I was just trying to fit in again. And all these things started coming towards me, where my mom knew someone who worked at a gym who was general manager. She's like, I know this manager. Would you like to interview with him? And I said, sure. So I did that. And for me, I believe my purpose was to help people, to make people feel good, to see the better parts of themselves, to change their mindset, and so that they could change their physical bodies. And so I started personal training, and I help people to succeed with their goals. And I love Tony Robbins. So Tony Robbins, he's a self-development coach, amazing person. And I remember then I asked another question, and I said, I love what he does. How can I do what he does? And life coach was kind of the buzzword. And so I started looking at life coaching certifications and all those things. And I wanted to be different than people in the personal training realm. And I started looking into that. So right now my business is Strong Within, and I help people. I'm also a personal trainer. And I think too, this is about figuring out your path, because everyone's going to have a different path. So for me, I personal train, and I also life coach because I like doing two different entities. And so sometimes I think too, especially when you're in the beginning process of your training, sometimes you're like, I'm ready to quit my job and go straight into that other aspect. There's nothing wrong with it. You can do that, but sometimes you need a little buffer to help you to that. And also you got to make sure that that buffer isn't one of those things that keeps you from taking that bigger jump. Sometimes we're playing small, so we always have something that we can fall back on. So anyways, that was the aspect. And do you want me to talk about how we met and all that stuff? Okay. So I wanted to talk about trusting the universe. And as I said, I put this thing down. This is what I'd like to do. And things started, I don't believe there are coincidences in life. When you trust the universe, when you trust yourself, when you trust that bigger purpose, things start falling into order. And I know it seems like coincidence, it seems weird, but it's happened so many times that I don't really believe in coincidences anymore. So anyways, what happened was I had an opportunity to be on MTV for a personal training show. I told them I was a life coach, and I was surprised actually that I was chosen for it. When I did my videos and I did all this stuff, first of all, I did things that made me a little different so that I would stand out in the video. But every time before I went to speak the video, because I took a couple takes because I messed up, I flubbed up certain things. And I said these affirmations of, this is what I want to portray in the video. I said, I want to be clear. I want to be concise. I want to be energetic. I want to be fun. I want to, other things that I said. And I believe that, and I was talking with Vicky about this, is that we become what our expectation is. And so we have to state some of these things. And so, I was a little nervous about getting in front of the camera, messing up, but saying those things over and over again, it helped me to start working through those things and to start, I don't want to say believing that it was part of that, but it was about creating a different energy. And so I was chosen for it. And the thing is, when I was saying what I wanted out of the MTV thing, I actually said I didn't want the MTV thing because I didn't think I would get it. I actually said I wanted the MTV thing because I just finished up my life coaching certification program, and I thought, well, this is going to help me to move forward with this. And so actually that's what happened. I got the gig and I had to get my website ready. I had to start paying clients. I had to start living the aspect because I was kind of playing safe. I was like, when you're finished, you're like, okay, you're supposed to have paying clients. And I was fudging that a little bit because I'm like, oh, I don't want to take their good money. I'm not ready yet. I need to be perfect. And so I wasn't really going forward because I was afraid. And so by me doing this and saying, this is what I want, that I wanted to better my life coaching practice, the universe gave me exactly what I needed. And so that's how Vicky and I connected, because she saw the episode. And so I think it came out in 2011. So we've been kind of talking for about 6 years.
Yeah, a while ago. And it was your shirt because you had your own Strong Within shirts actually made.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the logo on the back of it and I was trying to read, what does it say? What does it say? And I stopped it and I looked in close and it said Strong Within. And I thought, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that whole idea of being strong within, so that, your life outside is influenced by your intention on the inside. So I really liked that. And as I connected with you and we started talking, there's a quite a philosophical aspect to where you come from, which is something that I really like myself. So that's how we connected and started talking about that. So you went through your own ups and downs, your own second guessing, the perfectionism, the losing direction, trying to find yourself, essentially trying to find your own sense of worth. And that's what's led you to do what you do now. So how do you actually work with your clients now, taking your own life experience and what you've learned about yourself? How do you apply that within your Strong Within philosophy to working with your clients?
I think it's a twofold thing, because I think the first thing is, by us becoming life coaches, we have to live the aspect of what we want to be. It doesn't mean that we have to be perfect and all that stuff, but I dealt with depression and suicidal thoughts for a good portion of my life because I was always saying, well, people don't like you, they're just being nice to you, you're stupid, you're messing up. And I can go back to all those things because on my Instagram account, I'm always posting like one of those stories. They disappear after, 24 hours. It's about 14 seconds, but I'm always putting something positive, and I'm trying to put little, hey, how can we be grateful today? Or how can we face the sun in our lives and look towards the beautiful things? And, the aspect is that this person asked me, hey, are you happy all the time? And I said, no, I'm sad. There are certain things where it's not always going my way and I don't trust the process, but I know the difference. And so I work to focus more on that and to not stay stuck there. And so the reason I'm going with this is that how I work with my clients is, and maybe I don't want this to sound selfish, but the reason I work with people because it makes me better. And so it always is challenging me to learn new things and to listen to people. And so the second aspect is, I think about it this way. You know, we go to these certification programs, we want to learn all the answers, we want to give people the answers. And this is the reason I named my business Strong Within, is that they already have the answers. You just need to ask the right questions. Doesn't mean you can't give advice. Doesn't mean that, you know, because some of these life coaching programs are like, okay, well, don't give advice, only ask questions and all that stuff. But then you're not being real. You know, it's really about asking questions, and it's about understanding that you're just a few steps ahead of them. And probably the people that you're going to connect most with are the people who mirror you, who see things your way and all that stuff. And that's, again, maybe the universe is always working to bring people in our lives to connect us with the people that we need to learn from, and also the people that we need to touch base with. So it's about understanding that in the end, they have the answers, and it's just about really listening and being considerate and caring to help them to see it. Because in the end, the best way that they're going to find that answer is not by you giving them advice, but you asking the question for them to come to that aha moment.
Yeah, I like to teach the students that we're facilitators of people to find their own answers, to contact that deeper source within them that already has the knowing that they're looking for, that already has the answers that they're seeking. We're just helping facilitate creating that safe space for vulnerability and trust, and allowing that person to look deeper without judgment or without external influence, so that we can help bring those questions and those answers to light, so that they can actually step out of that reality that the past has created for them in the present, and move towards the future that they want to create for themselves.
Well, and I'll say this to kind of get on this point a little bit too, because the ego will get a bad rap. Everyone will say the ego, you know, get rid of the ego. The ego is still a good thing because it says, hey, stand up for yourself, some of these other things. So it's about looking, but the ego aspect in this, for me and some other people, it's like, I have to be the answer. I have to be the one giving it to that person so I can feel valuable and all of that. And it's about letting go of the aspect, because in the end, when I was trying to be the answer, I would get nervous because I'm like, what if I don't have the answer? And then I wouldn't be authentically there because I'm not listening to them. I'm trying to be that perfect thing that they need, instead of saying, hey, I'm not the answer. They are the answer, but I'm part of the equation in this.
And you touched on a word there that is big for a lot of people and a lot of students. Perfectionism. If we try and attain a perfectionism of having it all together, projecting the image of this perfect life that we're trying to help our clients achieve, then we're not being real, we're not being authentic, because we don't always have it together. And that's part of us doing our own self-growth and continuing our own journey to get to know what we need to know as we progress, and not trying to portray that we're not still learning and growing and making mistakes and learning from them as we go while we're helping our clients. So what would you say about perfectionism? What would you say about what's the downside of holding on to perfectionism instead of giving it up, in place of being real and there with your clients?
Sure. There are a couple of things I'm thinking about. Perfectionism, we all know it's not real anyways, because it's a stagnant state. We're always evolving. And, you know, the aspect is, people will say, you know, hey, don't change. But, you know, the aspect is we're always wanting to change. We're never wanting to be, the only reason you're not changing, well, at least in the physical realm, is that you're dead. But you still are changing, your body's decomposing, not to get gross or anything. But there is no impermanence in this world. Everything is always changing, the spiritual, the physical, and all that stuff too. And here's what happens when you try to be perfect, is you are doing a disservice to yourself and to your clients. And what I mean by that is, I've gone and spoken in front of businesses or other people, and a lot of times I'm trying to be Superman. I'm trying to be, I have all the answers. I've got it all figured out. I'm going to show you what you need to be doing. Look at how perfect I am. Look at how good I am. And then what happens is you don't connect with people. And how I learned that, I don't know if you're going through this in your program, but there's a TED Talk with Brene Brown. Do you know who Brene Brown is?
Yeah,
Talking about vulnerability, and watching that video, just it was an eye-opening experience to me to say, you know what, you don't have to be perfect, and it's okay to tell people your story. And that's when I started opening up about my depression and my suicidal thoughts and all that stuff too, and it let people know that I was real. It helped me to connect with them. And, you know, there'll be people who say, and I look at some of the reviews that people give Brene Brown who don't get it. They're like, well, you can't be vulnerable all the time. And it's not about being weak. It's just about how do you authentically connect with people? And that's the vulnerability. It's not about weakness. It's about letting people know who you are and letting people know the struggles and letting people know where you are in your life. And I think too, and this will be for me and the way that I changed, because usually where I was actually, I wasn't letting people know this, but I was telling this in my mind, is that there was always something wrong with you. You know, that there's something that is inherently wrong with you. God made a mistake in your creation. You don't know what your purpose is. So then God must have made a mistake with you. And that was the thing. I always thought that I needed to figure out my one purpose and then it would all come together. But we don't have one purpose. And that's the lie that we tell ourselves. And it's what kept me stuck is we have many purposes and then we'll evolve through all these things. And, you know, I'll hear people like, well, I was like, you know, what do you do? And they're like, well, I'm just a lawyer. I'm just a mother. And I'm like, you're not just these things. That's a part of who you are. That's one of your purposes. And I think too, we sometimes get caught in these lies of we have to find this exact perfect thing. And I think too, to get into this, we'll end on the aspect. Really, people want to have certain concepts on things. They want to have certain concepts on who you are so they can feel safe and they can put you in their box. And I'll use these other things because I was raised Catholic and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I don't subscribe to an organized religion anymore. I'm not saying wrong any which way, but the aspect is we are told this is the way God is. This is the concept of God. And I was listening to a spiritual guy and he was talking about Buddhism. He was talking about other things where I always thought, well, they really didn't believe in God. But he was saying they really don't have a word for God because there is no exterior of God because God is everything and all that stuff too. So anyways, so some of these concepts that we have, we try to utilize them to make us safe. We try to utilize them to fit into our perfect world. But in the end, it keeps us from really evolving and opening our mind to the bigger picture, to the truth of certain things.
I like the way that you have connected perfectionism to vulnerability, because if we're not vulnerable, if we don't be authentic and allow people to see us, allow our clients to see us as we are, then we aren't being truthful to ourselves, but we aren't allowing ourselves to be relatable. If we try and have that idea of perfectionism in our head, we aren't relating to our own story, and therefore our clients or our potential clients can't relate to us. Because I think that's very intimidating for a potential client to say, for example, want to work with someone in a health capacity or a wellness capacity, but because the coach has this social media presence of perfection, it's almost intimidating for the average, normal, everyday person to want to work with that coach, because they feel like they're so far removed from where that coach actually is. When in reality, it's just a projection of the image of perfectionism of, yes, I've got it all together. I'm you know, great. This is what you want. Yeah, come work with me. But I think that's really intimidating because it doesn't actually relate to the client. Yeah. And we have to be relatable to our clients for them to feel safe with us. And that does need vulnerability.
Sure.
So how you actually work with your clients now, what's the approach that you have working with your clients, taking all of this information that you've learned and helping them find their own answers? How do you go about that? Was that a really daunting task for you in the beginning? Did you sort of think about, you know, how am I going to do this? How am I going to package it? How am I going to put it together? How's that come together for you?
Well, here's me being vulnerable. I still struggle with it. We were talking about niches and all that stuff. One of the issues that I have is I want to work with a lot of people. You know, I don't want to say, hey, I only work with divorced moms or, you know, because, you know, a lot of times they're talking about you need to specialize in some of these things. And so I'm not telling you where to go, but I'm telling you I struggle because I haven't specialized in certain things because I want to help people. And so then what happens, you know, the saying is when you generalize, when you try to do it for everyone, this information, your information becomes valuable to no one because you're trying to reach everyone and all that stuff too. And I have that fear, and probably this is my vulnerability of missing out. if I choose this direction, I'm going to be missing out. And so, there's certain directions that I say, well, I don't want to necessarily go in the health field because I personal train. And once people know I'm a personal trainer, like, well, how do I lose weight? And I'm like, well, that's not really what I'm about. So sometimes I am stumping myself because I'm saying I don't want to go here. And this is what I've been talking with a lot of marketing people, and they say, people aren't going to buy what they need. They're going to buy what they want. And so what you do is you figure out what they want, and then you start going in the back door to what they need and all that stuff, where they may talk about money and that's really what they want, but in the end it's really you're going to help them to get through their love and all these other things about why some of this stuff's happening. So my vulnerability is that I still struggle with, hey, should I say I'm a life coach? Hey, should I say I'm a personal development coach? I'm writing a book on confidence. Should I say I'm a confidence coach? And so I kind of struggle with this aspect, and I'll talk about falling forward in a little bit. But so how I work with my clients now is, there are different ways. People either know about me through the gym. So me being out in the real world, people hear about it, they know about it, and like, hey, I want to work with you. There are aspects where, on my Instagram or doing other things, I'm always trying to post, or I'm always trying to do these things that are getting me out there. And so that's how people, find me. And so I go about, when I do find these people, I really try to connect with them. We'll have a conversation, because usually they're not always in my town or anything like that. So when they call me, it's just, I listen to them. I say, what's going on? And I will, after I listen to them, then I give them the story on me. I tell them my story. I tell them, hey, this is what I dealt with. This is why I got into this, and all these things, because I want them to know about me. I'm not saying it's the right place or it's always the perfect thing, but I really want to connect with people, and I want to work with the people who resonate with me. Being in the personal training field or even in life coaching, sometimes, especially when we're starting, we're trying to take anyone that we can. And then you're hating life because either these clients don't want to work, they want the magic bullet, which is, you're not going to be the magic bullet. You're going to help them to that. And so that's kind of how I start working with them. And then I start figuring out, okay, what is the issue that's going on? And then it's just about asking them powerful questions. I think in the end, and this is where I can get stuck, and this is where other people can get stuck, is really what these clients need is they need consistency. Because if the things are to change, it's simple. It really is simple to change. It's not easy, but it's just, we're trying to do everything at once. And when you're trying to do everything at once, this is the other thing that goes on, is you really aren't making choices anymore. You're trying to fit everything in instead of saying what's most important to me. And that's really what you help your clients to do. You help them to figure out what's really most important to them. What do you want to get out of this session? How do we maximize this? If we were to, if this session went amazingly, what would you have gotten out of the end of the session? They'll give you the answer. We just need to ask the questions, and sometimes we need to shut up, because for me, it's sometimes the ego talking. It's like, I need to be giving them the answer. I need to be doing this instead of just letting them speak, having that air of pausing, because I kind of get nervous. And sometimes that's why I speak fast when I'm presenting, because I'm like, oh, well, if I'm not speaking fast, they're going to think that I'm thinking and I don't know what I'm talking about. Just these stupid things that I tell myself and all that. So again, it's just connecting with people. It's hearing their story, because they're going to give you the answer. And then it's about, how do you really ask those questions? And then how do you put in some of that advice into that? Because again, it's really about connecting with people. You need to ask good questions, but they're also looking for feedback on something. So, I've talked with people who've dealt with therapists or psychiatrists, psychologists and all that, where they're not really giving advice. It's a type of therapy where they're just listening, and they're like, I don't feel like I'm really heard. I'm just listened to. And so that's, how do you, and sometimes you may not even have to give advice. You just have to repeat what they said. So you were trying to say this is what you're saying. And then that gives them room to say, I'm heard. Because I'll think about this too. A lot of times the people are coming to you is because they don't feel heard. They don't feel like their stuff matters. And so you are giving them that air and that room to really listen to them.
Yeah, and we do actually touch on that when we talk about in our communication skills module in module 3. We do actually talk about feedback and setting the client up for not just paraphrasing and validating them and acknowledging their feelings and rewording back to them what they've said so that we can reassure them we're listening, we heard them
Sure.
correctly, and that we can confirm we've heard and understood what they're saying to us, but also to perhaps sometimes set them up for, can I just repeat back to you what you said to me, because your aim is to achieve this, but you've just said to me that you do this.
Yeah.
So just giving them that feedback to let them hear themselves as well as validate that you have heard them, so that they can actually see the differences between what they want and what they're actually doing.
Sure.
So all of that is part of communication and listening and validating. Yeah.
Totally agree. And just to come back to the niche aspect, that's why, for me, being a coach since 2010, there's some things that I struggle with because I haven't chose that specified path. So then, the aspect is when I'm trying to explain to people what I do, sometimes I do have an issue because I can't be specific. Well, I help you get unstuck, or I help you to do this. And in the end, they're like, well, what the hell does that mean? And so, by finding your niche and finding some of those things that this is who I want to work with, you actually start to then understand who the people that you're really dealing with, your avatar is what they call it. So
Yeah.
you kind of know their age, all these things, but it also opens up the door because, again, I have the fear of missing out. So sometimes I don't choose that. But in the end, the people who need you will find you, and they say, oh, well, I know you work with divorced women, but do you consider doing this as well? And, that's where, you kind of then open up the door to all those things. Because for me, not choosing that path, I probably don't have as many clients as I could. So then I'm not opening up the door. I'm closing the door because I'm like, well, I want to work with everyone. And then I'm not valuable, but I'm not as, people don't understand really what I do. And there are a lot of times people like, we know what a life coach is, but a lot of people are like, well, what's a life coach? I don't understand that. And so it's about, I think the more specific that you can get with certain things, then the more that you can help them to understand not only what life coaches do, but what you do, because in the end, you're trying to make a living. You're trying to get people to come to you, but it's about also connecting with the right people. And if you can specify that, then you're going to find the people that you really want to work with.
Yeah. So let's talk about falling forward now.
Okay. Falling forward is just being okay with making mistakes. It's getting rid of that perfectionist attitude. For me, and if we're to get vulnerable, the aspect was it's me not trusting the process of the universe of my growth. The aspect of how I got my life coaching business started was I said I wanted this MTV gig to help me to just get it started. I didn't think I was going to get it. And so the aspect is I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm talking about, that I have to have all the answers. And I think too, this is a realization that I've come to, and I'll bring this to your enlightenment, is that we think we have to give them the answers, but really there are two types of people in the world. There are people who are detail oriented, and there are people who are more, open to bigger concepts and all that stuff. There was a guy I was listening to, and he was talking about scientific research where there are people, the detail, they want the atoms, they want that specific thing, and people who are, the bigger picture, they talk about waves, they talk about other things like that. So in the end, I'm really not trying to tell people the answer. I'm trying to open up the possibility to other answers. And that was, a huge point for me, because I was thinking about, I got to give them the answer. I got to do this. And so when Vicky and I started speaking, I've been talking about doing a podcast, and, she interviewed me, what is it, about a year, 2 years ago or something like that?
Maybe 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
It was a while ago.
Yeah. And I was ready to do it. I had already interviewed people. I'm like, I got to have the right equipment, or I got to figure out how to get on iTunes. I got to figure out all this stuff. And I just never put it out there because it had to be perfect. And so something happened last year, and it just said, let's get moving. Stop wasting time, because you're not really living the life that you want. So I decided, and I chose one word that I wanted my 2017 to be. It was publish, because I was writing a book. I actually had been writing a book for 4 years. I wrote 400 pages in about a year and a half. And I just kept writing and writing and writing and writing. And the reason I kept writing is because if I kept writing, I didn't have to put it out in the world. I didn't have to be judged on it. And then, I could tell people, hey, I'm writing, but I didn't put it out there. And so in July, I decided to start doing these habits of creating small habits to help me to change. And so the culmination of, so then I decided to publish a podcast in January. I've written this book. I started in July. I scrapped the old book. Doesn't mean I won't come back to it. But in July, I started writing a new book, and I was writing it on confidence, and I just submitted it to an editor for final review and all that stuff. I'm sure there's going to be things that I need to edit to get the layout and all that stuff too. But it's my plan to get this. I would like to get it to the end of May, whether that happens or not. But this year, it's about publishing. And so it was just about understanding that, because I wasn't putting things forward because I wanted it to be perfect, but I'm going to tell you what's happened by me doing these things. So first of all, I'm going to get, a lot of times those seem like huge goals for you right now. The reason those things happened, motivation happens. The greatest thing that will motivate people is small progress. And I was reading this quote, and it was saying that they would rather, people want to have small progress instead of bagging that occasional elephant, that huge goal, that big jackpot and all that stuff. So you need to, and that's what they talk about, eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So for me, how I started this, it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to have this podcast, because I had already been planning this stuff. I'm going to have this book. It was just about, I wanted to start creating habits that would move me forward. So the first one was, I decided on one habit that was going to domino affect all these other ones. It was getting up at 6 a.m. every morning. For me, being a personal trainer, I could get up at, the times when I had my clients, 9 o'clock. I'd wait till the last moment to get up, where I'd have to shower, and I could just get there just right in time. And I was always stressed out. So I decided I was going to, all these podcasts I listen to, the people who are amazing entrepreneurs, they have their me time. They have their self time. They spend like 2 hours before. There was a guy, he's like, I spend 2 hours before my first appointment. And that meant something to me. So I said, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. every morning. So my alarm is set for 6 a.m. 7 days a week. It doesn't always mean that if I'm tired, I've stayed up too late. If I'm not where I'll get up at 6 a.m. I do my meditation, and then I'll go back to sleep for a little bit. But also I see my day doesn't function the way that I want to. So it's because I'm not doing what I need to do. I'm getting to bed later. I'm working later and all that stuff instead of getting what I'm done. So I said I was going to get up at 6 a.m. The other habit was that I was going to walk every single day outside, at least a mile, rain, sleet, snow, sunshine, all that stuff. It was about movement. And the other thing is, I wasn't writing at the time, but I used to write poetry. And I said, I'm going to write a poem every day. I'm not going to perfect it. It's just going to be written, and it's going to be published on my site, because there was nothing that was going on. I'll talk about this too. The other thing is, there was a podcast that was put out, and it says, are you an entrepreneur or are you a wantrepreneur? And I was the wantrepreneur, because I was always waiting for this other thing. I've gone through 3 different website builders and all that stuff. I've had issues with them. Some of it was my fault. Some of it was their fault. And I was always waiting for them to fix it. And so I was losing clientele. I wasn't building my clientele. I wasn't moving. So by me doing the poems and publishing, it actually, even though it wasn't anything towards that, it was me moving towards something. And then I started writing the book, and I started writing every day, and I was walking every day. And I think too, I'm on, like, at least with my poetry, which I started about the same time as my walking, I'm at day 252 consecutively of doing this. So in the end, those things, we look at them as these big things, but the reason that they happen is they happen with these small, consistent goals. And so I decided to put that stuff out there, and I decided to get this podcast out in January. And what it's done for me, it's helped me to connect with people that I never would have connected with. It's helped me to make mistakes that I never would have made and learn from them. And actually, I wasn't fully ready to do the interview. I felt I wasn't. I'm still working on that. But I had been working on daily affirmations, because that's what changed my thought on suicidal tendencies and depression. So I actually said, why don't we split this podcast up? Let's do a 3 to 5 minute podcast on daily affirmations. Let's get that out there, and then make mistakes on it. And then you can either bring those 2 podcasts together, you can have them separate. Because I was always like, well, which one do I choose? Do I put them together? And I was just like, it was this paralysis of analysis. And I was like, screw it. You just need to get moving. You need to fall forward. And that has been the changing factor in my life. By movement, it stopped me from being stagnant. So I decided to fall forward. I decided to look, I don't, we think we look sillier than we do. And I was talking with Vicky about this too, is that there's a quote that says, I found I didn't get the experience until after I needed it. You have to go through it to get that experience. And we want to be perfect. And we forget this as kids. If you play a sport, you have to practice. But we think as adults, we want to be there right away. We want to have it figured out. But if you look at these great superstars, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, or whatever sport, who is at the peak of their goal, they didn't just get there. They worked every day towards it. They had coaches, they had all those things, and they decided to make mistakes. They decided to learn from it, and they decided to fall forward through that whole aspect of that.
I love it. I love it. No man's an island. None of us are perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And we can either stagnate, stay still, or we can take small action steps every day to get where we want to go. It doesn't have to be perfect, but unless we take that action, unless we move forward in some capacity, we are not going to learn. We are not going to find the answers and figure it out because we're preventing ourselves from actually trying.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that because perfectionism and holding ourselves captive and not allowing ourselves to get out there and really share what we know and continue opening the doors to learn more. That's what prevents a lot of people, not just coaches, but a lot of people from really reaching their highest potential,
Sure.
from really getting to know and understand themselves and put their best foot forward. Thank you so much for sharing that. Do you have any other last tips of advice that you've learned the hard way that would be really helpful for our newbie holistic coaches who are very soon embarking on their own adventure of their own life coaching businesses?
Sure. And actually I was thinking about, hopefully I don't forget about it now, because I was thinking about this. You're in a process right now where you're learning all this stuff. And then, as I said, you're kind of fearful to go out and say, oh, I don't want to charge people yet because I don't want to rip them off. I'm not there yet. So you need to get out there and you need to start valuing yourself because you have great things to say and all that stuff. So definitely you need to charge for your services. You need to put it out there, not to be giving things away free all the time, because then you devalue all these things. And even personal training, I'll give people a free first session and they don't show up because there's nothing to hold them to it. There's no value to it and all that. And so sometimes it's the perceived value. So you need to do that. But this is what I was going to say too. When you get further along and you're creating content, you're writing a book or you're doing a podcast, maybe you'll never do that or something like that. I'm not saying you have to do that, but the aspect, I think too, to get out there, whether it be a blog post, whether it be all these things, one of the reasons that stopped me from doing that is I was always figuring out, how can I make money doing this? How do I get people to pay me for this? And I think that's a good thing. But one of the things is it stopped me because I was always trying to figure out how to make money instead of trying to create value for people. Some of the people that I follow online, all the stuff, the books that they've written and all these other things, they've said, this is all in my blog posts. I actually just put this together, and then people purchased it because they wanted it all organized, or they love what I do and they really wanted to support me. And I think that's really what it's about. Yes, we want to make money. We want to make a living out of this, but your ultimate aspect, your ultimate goal is, well, I don't want to tell you where you want to be. I'll say mine. My ultimate goal is to create immense value in people's lives because I want to change people's lives. And I think that's why you're doing it. I don't think you're here to just make money. And if you are here to just make money, I think you're in it for the wrong reason, because you won't make money if that's your viewpoint on things. Because it's like the salespeople who don't believe in their product. It's hard for them to sell that, because they're just trying to make money and all that stuff too. So ask yourself and be okay with making mistakes, falling forward and say, how do I create value in people's lives? Because for me, as I said with the podcast, I've got to have this hour-long podcast. I've got to have this 30-minute long podcast. I've got to have these great guests. But in the end, it was just about, hey, all I have to have is a 3 to 5 minute daily affirmation. Those are things that changed my life. Things that we say to ourselves. I may not have the answer right now, but I know I'll find it. That I can learn to love where I'm at in the moment. I may not have the money that I want. I will always have more money than I need. And then it's about changing all that stuff. So it's about figuring out maybe what you really want to bring into the world. It might also be figuring out what you really want to learn and become better. And that's, again, as I started this process of life coaching, I don't want to say it's selfish, but it's about me becoming better through that. The reason I do this is because I want to help people. But in the end, I really want to help myself first so that I can help all those people. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and your honesty and keeping it real with us today. I absolutely enjoy our conversations every time we talk. And I know that the students are going to get a lot of value out of your perspectives and your ideas and your own experience today. So where can they find you, Chris?
My website is www.chrisohern.com. It's also strongwithin.com if that's easy for you. You can listen to my podcast. It's on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, most of the main places. It's also my website. But if you go to those places and you type in the Strong Within Daily Podcast, you'll find me there and all that. And I post something every day. So
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining us for another coaching interview series. We love bringing you these conversations with real people, real coaches, so that you can learn from them, you can get inspired, you can take action in your own life so that you can light the way in your business and life forward. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you next time.